Ks and Ls were reported coming in from the Pacific for the first time since July. About that time, J-pods started trending southwest toward the Ks and Ls. That afternoon, anticipating a superpod, the Center for Whale Research launched 3 boats, 1 from Victoria and 2 from San Juan Island. Around 3:30, a whale watch naturalist noticed a blip next to J35, Tahlequah. When there's a newborn orca, a blip is all you see. The mother comes up in this smooth, graceful arc and this powerful blow, and then you see right next to the mom, a little blip.
And I love that story from Howard Garrett. And so, Tree, can you tell us a little bit more about what your reactions were as you were listening to this story? And Leanne, you have one small announcement.
Yes, I just want to let the people that are watching on YouTube know that somehow the original start of the wrap up today dropped out, and we're now back on continuing our wrap up of the Ocean Life Symposium. And that clip is what Tree is going to talk about now. We did figure out how to share the screen with you. And so you're seeing not only our presentation from the speakers pop up in a screen, but you also see what we have on our studio computer screen. So take it away, Tree.
That story that Howard shared just gave me the chills, learning about the birth of that new calf, which is so vitally important to that J-pod, because as we know that they are very critically endangered. And I was so thrilled to receive the news. I knew about this calf being born. That was the same mother, Orca, who lost a calf I think it was 2 years ago, and carried that calf around for 17 days as if to tell the world, we need help. we are suffering here. And it was just a remarkable story to hear about the birth of that calf. And there was a second birth also this summer. So, and both calves seem to be doing well, is what Howard shared with us. And that just, it gives me great hope, for their future.
And we're going to hear, not now, but a little bit later in this morning's presentation, a recap of the ocean life, a little bit more about the culture of these orcas. And this here at KGUA, we've had a lot of presentations and learned so much about these mammals, because they are mammals, and mammals in the ocean primarily is a lot of what this Ocean Life Symposium is about. And the effects of climate change, because just as we mammals walking on the earth are being affected by climate change, so are the mammals and the other species. So let's now go to a wonderful presentation by London Fletcher. She's a 13-year-old.
Through markings, we found that this is OFA, this record from 2012, because OFA has a V-shaped scar on the side of her mouth. And she also has 2 lateral marks on her back, which we don't know what they're caused by, but we're presuming propeller marks. And so we can see the same scars showing 7 years later. Before OFA, the longest recorded residency was in 4 months, and it was in Georgia, outside the Antarctic. So she has been here for 7 years and counting. She is still in New Zealand today. And so this leads us to our next form of residency, is births. So we thought that there have been no births outside the Antarctic, but actually that is false, because we saw a birth, but that went unpublished. And so we can see multiple births happening, and I think there are, as of now, 5 pubs. Don't quote me on that, but which leads us into our next point, their conservation status, because they are a very important species. And so we can classify them as resident now, because we can see that they do not match the vagrant profile. And so the Department of Conservation classified OFA and all of her leopard seal companions as resident in 2019, which was a great accomplishment because it showed that our research efforts weren't in vain.
And that was London Fletcher, 13-year-old young woman who even has her own nonprofit organization. The depth and breadth of that we have learned and that was in 1 hour on our first day at the Ocean Life Symposium was, I think, it was so fulfilling to learn so much about the ocean. We who live here right at the coastline see the ocean, and we sometimes see the fins, and certainly see the sea lions and the dolphins. So for those of you who don't live at the ocean or at any part in the world, here's your opportunity to learn more about it. And I do want to give a big shout out to Scott and Tree, because these two who lived in Maine and spent time here have done so much for us here on the coast, as we have learned about so much about the whales. Tree, do you want to tee us up? We're going to move to Tuesday.
Richard Charter.
Well, right. But Tree, you want to tell us a little bit about Richard Charter?
I guess I'm Tree.
All right, Scott, you tell us about Richard.
Well, Richard Charter has done a tremendous amount of work here. And before we arrived on the scene in 2014, Richard had already made a name for himself by organizing opposition to offshore oil drilling here on the coast. And I remember during the Gulf oil platform explosion, the Deepwater, Richard was often on CNN giving commentary. So it's great to have him as a friend and as a colleague here on the coast. He and I have been sharing information the last few days about some of the work now being done on tidal power and also alternative energies. And also the horror we're finding off of Point Vicente with the leaking 500,000 barrels of DDT, which is now leaking into the environment. So it's been a pleasure. It was a pleasure having Richard on here. He did come to the climate change event last September here in Gualala, and then I had hoped to get him up to Mendocino for the first annual symposium, but he had he's very busy. He already had a speaking engagement that same weekend somewhere else, and then COVID had caused him to cancel out with us for the second annual here, which I tried to hold in town, and we had fully planned at the community center. So it's too bad it took COVID, but we were able to get Richard on this virtually, the second here online here through KGUA.
All right, let's hear from Richard now.
A congressman from Oregon, Congressman Les Coyne, got together with a congressman from Massachusetts named Silvio Conte, and they got together with our local officials and our citizens and invented in 1981 calendar year for the fiscal year 1982 Interior Appropriations Bill, a ban on funding for the Interior Department so that they couldn't spend money on leasing here. And that became as the Congressional Outer Continental Shelf Moratorium. There were a lot of us, just like there are a lot of birds today on the Farallon Islands. And it began with Oregon, California, and Massachusetts, but we all set a precedent for using our grassroots connection to our local officials and our connection to our state elected officials. And then we went to Congress. We quickly learned that the entire Outer Continental Shelf of the U.S., not only the West Coast, but the East Coast, the Gulf Coast, and Alaska, was eventually going to be open to offshore drilling. And then we managed to renew for 27 years, 1 year at a time, this congressional protection. Not always easy. It's sometimes passed by a single vote margin each year in the House Appropriations Committee. But the key thing about it that we need to remember, I think, most today is that it was always bipartisan. The Democrats and the Republicans got together and saved their coasts. And that 27-year annual moratorium in Congress extended until 2009, when the second George Bush left office. And then the whole coast was open. But of course, President Obama did not start efforts to drill in those previously protected areas.
And that was Richard Charter, who was our leadoff speaker on Tuesday of this week from the Ocean Foundation, and our own local hero. We can tell you lots of stories about him saving Bodega Bay from what's known as, where now there is what's known as the hole in the head. On Tuesday, we had, and we'll admit it, we had one glitch. Just one glitch, and out of all of these speakers and all of those you who are used to Zoom conferences these days, some people say they spend their whole day on Zoom meetings. Sadly, we did not get the presentation from Michael Stockard, and we will have, who is an acoustic expert. We will have him on Peggy's Place soon. So we just wanted to give a big shout out to Michael and apologize for all of. It's technical. Who knows what happens?
You know, internet on his end just wasn't working, and there's just only so much to do. But, you know, we're very fortunate that there weren't more technical glitches this week.
Absolutely.
I mean, with the power that had to be shut off to prevent fires, didn't actually end up affecting us, which was amazing.
Absolutely. Well, I think, Scott, you have something to say about the next speaker we're going to hear from, Carter Mercer.
Yes, Carter is my nephew and a very bright boy. Since a lot of the Mercers aren't very good at math, I don't know where he got that aptitude, but he's majoring in, he's going to major in engineering, but he's gone into some sort of business. And he is doing, well, as an undergraduate, before he even had his bachelor's degree, a couple of his professors picked him to work on a project they had received funding for on sea level rise and property values. So now he did get his BA last May or June, and he's now a graduate student, still working with those professors, and is continuing on this study of property values along the coast and sea level rise.
Gulf of Maine has been warming at 7 times the global average, which is something I didn't know before starting this research project. So a large part of the sea level rise is attributed to the expansion of seawater. As it warms, it expands more. And finally, these coastal communities in seacoast New Hampshire are at significant risk. This is a good visual for showing this area of New Hampshire. In particular, we chose to look at areas affected by 6-foot sea level rise, which can be seen in the blue shaded region. And all of those orange points are the homes and the structures that are included in this study. So this is the mathematical technique used here. And we have our data, and this process comes up with a certain belief of what kind of functions could help map this data. And then as you get more data, it actually creates a pretty good prediction of what you want to estimate up to infinite variables. In this case, we only have 2 variables, which is distance from the water and elevation. So this is actually what the surface looks like. And as you can see, and as expected, distance from the water is really the key indicator of a home's price. As you're closer to the water, it's more appealing to live there. And I want you to ignore this drop off here. That's just the function doing what it's supposed to do. But theoretically, that would be homes that are placed in the ocean, so that those wouldn't exist in the data set. But as you can see, at any distance from the water, it's really flat. The FFE, the first finished floor elevation, doesn't actually really change the home's price. So New Hampshire buyers aren't yet putting a premium on a higher elevation, which we thought might have been the case originally.
You know, I found that part really fascinating, that prices yet are not affected by the, future rise of sea level.
Well, I I hate to say it, but I think there's a lot of denial of science going on with real estate companies. And the thing I'm so struck by what we're watching in this whole symposium is that this is celebrating science, something that we haven't had enough done over the past 4 years, if I may say so. And especially when it comes to climate change and seeing the effects, as I say, not only on the mammals, but us earth walkers as well. I want to remind people you're listening to Peggy's Place or watching it this morning on YouTube. Leanne Lindsay is with me, Leanne, Scott, and Tree Mercer, who put together this amazing Ocean Life Symposium all this week. Live participants from all over the United States, the coasts, and the globe, and to teach us all about what goes on in the waters off the shore, whether it's Pacific, Atlantic, New Zealand, Africa. We're going to hear about some of those coasts as well.
And now I was going to say that Scott alluded to this earlier, but this is about the poisoning of the rodents that Scott's going to discuss with Richard next. Coming up.
Okay.
All right.
That's right.
So we can play this clip and you can watch it up in the corner of our screen.
And this is on the Farallon Islands.
Right.
Could you give us a follow-up on what may be going on now at the Farallons in terms of the rodent control?
Well, there has been a proposal on the desk of the Farallon Sanctuary and the Farallon Sanctuary Advisory Council that I serve on. Our Sanctuary Council passed a resolution about it back in January at our last in-person meeting. Late 1500s sometime, we think, the first European settlers, explorers, sent a crew ashore on the Farallons to club seals and steal seabird eggs. And in the course of that, some house mice got let loose on the Farallon Islands. And so the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service wants to drop 1.5 tons of a cereal bait laced with a second-generation anticoagulant rodenticide called brodifacoum from helicopters. This has become kind of a hot button issue because the Farallon Sanctuary itself has the most protected waters on the planet. You cannot, it has a regulation called enter and injure, where if a substance enters sanctuary waters and changes the ecology in any way, it doesn't even have to be damaged, that's illegal. So something like the poison drop on the Southeast Farallons not only would undermine the whole regulatory structure of this and all other sanctuaries in terms of a bad precedent, but it turns out that the poison in question itself is, it was just outlawed by the state of California. The governor about 3 weeks ago signed a bill from the state legislature that outlaws the use of second-generation anticoagulant rodenticides, including brodifacoum, anywhere on land in California. But in the case of the Farallons, that law will not apply. It takes effect in January.
I recently graduated from the University of Redlands in Southern California, and I want to talk about a particularly important topic today, which is the effects of rising sea surface temperatures, or in other terms, climate change and rising temperatures on the planet, and how it affects our marine mammals just off of our coast. My data was focused in Southern California, just to orient you. So we have had many recorded temperature anomalies in the Pacific Ocean. And that means that the temperatures have varied away from what we consider normal. Some events we might call a heat wave. So in 2014, it was really big in the news. There was a heat wave going on that we called the blob because of the image that you can see on the screen. It looks like this big mass of warm water just off of our coast. And it, as you can imagine, has impacted the inhabitants of the ocean are dealing with it. Thankfully, the temperatures subsided in the following years, but just this past September, about a year ago, scientists have noticed that a very similar looking heat wave has been starting to form. So we're worried about marine heat waves. And we also have something called ENSO, or the El Nino Southern Oscillation.
And that was Tessa Foster from the University of the Redlands talking about the effects of warming waters on, again, marine mammals in what's known as the Southern California Bight. I don't know about you, but I didn't know what a bight was, so I had to look it up. And Trier Scott, can you just tell us briefly what a bight is?
Yeah, what did you find as a definition? Because there's an area off New York called the New York Bight, which is
Just
always
where the land slopes down, gets shallow, but it's shallow.
Yeah, right. That's an area that I used to work out of or over, was the New York Bight. And we always used to wonder, what in the world is the Bight? Well, Tessa brought up a really interesting point in her talk, which was that the marine mammals may become somewhat accustomed to warming waters, but the food that they feed on, they rely on, does not, and will leave an area looking for better waters to be in, for example, colder waters. And when Zack gave his talk, he was talking about the same thing on the East Coast with the highly endangered right whales. The copepods, because of the warming waters, that the copepods are a tiny animal that the right whales rely on and feed on, over a ton a day of these tiny little critters. They have left the Bay of Fundy. The copepods have left the Bay of Fundy for colder waters. They're also going into deeper waters, looking for colder temperatures, and have moved into the Gulf of St. Lawrence, further up in Canada. And because of that, the right whales have moved into, have left the Bay of Fundy, the traditional feeding ground, or are diving deeper, which affects their energy budgets. So they have to dive deeper, stay down longer, and work harder for the calories they're getting. And they're also moving into the Gulf of St. Lawrence in search of copepods, where the copepods have kind of fled to for colder waters. And up there, they've been getting hit by shipping going into the St. Lawrence Seaway and getting caught up in crab traps up there, snow crabs that are harvested up in that area. So it's resulted in a lot of climate change has resulted in a lot of right whale deaths in that area because of this. So, and I gave a talk here at the climate change symposium that we had in town last September on Earth Day, or not on Earth Day, but as a result of all that. And another talk at the first symposium last year up in Mendocino on the same thing. So the three of us kind of unintentionally collaborated on a consequence of climate change and how it affects marine mammals on two different coasts over a year apart.
All right. We're good. Thank you, Scott, for that. And just some of you may know SquarePants SpongeBob. Is that it?
SpongeBob
SquarePants, yes.
And that's and it's a cocopod, right?
Right.
Right. Okay. Just another
A
thing.
little wisecracking guy with the one eye. Yeah.
Okay, we got to keep moving on here. We got so much more. This is going to be fascinating, this as they all have, but everybody wants to know about white sharks. But do we ever think about them on the Atlantic coast? Marianne Long is next.
You hear so much about white sharks, and white sharks are talked about in the news, and you see them on Shark Week. So for a lot of people, they do think that we know everything there is to know about white sharks. But when you actually take a look at this map and look at the global distribution of white sharks, there has been a lot of white shark research that has happened in other parts of the world. So even over there off the, Pacific coast of California, there's been a lot of white shark research that has taken place, the different researchers out there, and some long-term studies off the coast of South Africa or Australia, Guadalupe Island. These are all hotspots around the world where ongoing white shark research has taken place. for many years because there's been a known population of white sharks where scientists could come together and conduct research. The difference about here in the Northwest Atlantic, which is looking from, the coast of Florida all the way up off the coast of Canada, is that we've always known that there's white sharks here in this environment, but there was really never a hotspot, a place where scientists could go and have ongoing predictable access to white sharks to be able to conduct and lead a long-term study.
So this is a scientific poster presented to the Society for Marine Mammalogy Conference in San Francisco, California, back in December 2015. This project was in collaboration with researchers from the NOAA Southwest Fisheries Office who run the annual gray whale census for assessing the population size of the eastern North Pacific gray whale. I know there's a lot on this slide, but I'll be breaking it out for you over the next few slides. So don't worry. Every year, NOAA researchers stand along the bluffs at their Granite Canyon Research Facility in California and look out to sea holding binoculars to count gray whales as they pass by on the southbound leg of their annual migration. The folks at the Mendonoma Whale and Seal Study know a lot about this technique as they do a similar study from the Point Arena and neighboring areas. Torian Research was tasked by NOAA to design a system to assist with the annual gray whale census. This research by developing a method to automatically detect, track, and count gray whale blows as seen on the horizon using infrared camera technologies. One bonus, the human observers can't observe the whales at night, but the infrared system works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, counting whales both day and night during the entire gray whale migration season.
And
so on the top right, you can see the map of the California coast with the research location of the NOAA Granite Canyon facility shown in red. The triangle cone shape roughly shows the field of view of the cameras as they look straight out to sea from their mounting on the bluffs at the Granite Canyon facility. On the top left photo, you can see the 3-camera array. These are long-wave infrared cameras mounted near the station on the bluffs and are attached to a computer system located inside a nearby building.
And you were listening or watching Christina Tombach-Wright, who is the co-founder of CTW Consulting. And
also with Toyon Research Corporation.
And I love that map of the world habitat showing where the white sharks are, because we do think of them here and I think in Africa. So we're going to keep moving on here because we're going to run out of time. We've got a few more. Those 3 people, Tessa Foster, Marianne Long, and Christina Tombach-Wright, were presenting on Wednesday, and we're quickly moving up to our Thursday guests.
And this is Sarah Grimes of the Noyo Center for Marine Science, and that's up in Fort Bragg, just north of us, about an hour and 15 minutes. Here's Sarah.
These are some of the otariids that could wash ashore. We have the California sea lion, the Guadalupe fur seal, the northern fur seal, and the stellar sea lion. And then we have the phocids, who are our harbor seals or elephant seals. Here's the harbor seal pup. You probably know them really well as the larger spotted animals that haul up and down the coast. Here's our elephant seal. This also is a pup. And then, of course, there's the cetaceans. I have responded to gray whale, back whale, blue whale, fin whale, sperm whale, orca, and then the variety of porpoises and dolphins that may wash ashore. When I get a call, what next? First thing is to kind of get a location. So where is this animal that you're seeing? And getting a good location and directions to the beach is really important. And then I will head out and with my kit, and that includes a measuring tape and camera, and head out and find what has been reported. Here's responding to a California sea lion. And here's kind of a close-up shot with that measuring tool. And if you're out there and something washes up and it's going to wash back out, be quick. You can get a picture and get your foot in there if you don't have something to measure it by. A foot is always a good kind of ruler. So far in 2020, what has washed ashore? 2019 ended with a gray whale calf that washed up on the Manchester beach. It was still alive and it perished shortly after getting there, and the Marine Mammal Center actually came up to do full necropsy on that little animal. And then we've had an adult gray whale. Most of you in the Gualala area are familiar with that. Washington Scott and Tree actually helped us find that one. A humpback whale, also at Manchester. And we've had 13 harbor seals, 22 California sea lions, 2 northern elephant seals, 18 Guadalupe fur seals. I've just received a report that there is a northern fur seal carcass on the 10 Mile Beach.
Up next, Zack, Klyver, Blue Planet Strategy.
In the 1990s, I would go during the winter for 10 years to work with the Right Whale Observer Program down in Florida and Georgia. And there I was put up in planes to survey for right whales, or a lot of the times I lived out on ships for weeks at a time. Already we knew at that time that ship strikes were a great cause of mortality for the right whale. One day we were heading out of the channel, and I looked right ahead of us, and there's a right whale right in the middle of the channel. And I ran as quickly as I could to the bridge and told the mate, and he pulled the ship out of the channel, and we stopped, and the captain ran up and all the crew, and we watched this right whale in the middle of the channel, and it just roamed around the channel. That was a really profound experience to help protect that animal. Sadly, February 7th, 2004, we got the report that Stumpy had been killed by a ship. And this is a picture of her now in the North Carolina Museum of Science. Her skeleton was then taken there and articulated and is on display. That was a sad day for me. Fortunately, she had a calf that survived before that, and that calf's name was Phoenix. And Phoenix is alive today and doing well and giving birth. So if you go to Washington, D.C., go visit the Hall of Ocean Life, and you'll see the life-size model of Phoenix. In the late 2009-10 period, a lot of right whales started to be reported off the coast of Maine, not far out, 50 miles or so. So I reached out to Dr. Moira Brown, one of the greatest scientists for right whales, has dedicated her whole life to that. She's from Canada. We are talking about doing some winter surveys on the whale watch boats that I worked for. She was able to pull that together, and we conducted a whole series of winter surveys going offshore, looking for right whales with the right whale research team. Even though we're at a point where it's really dramatic now, there's been long-term systemic stress, and the population should really be at well over 1,000 or more now. It shouldn't have been at 500 when the numbers started to drop. It should have been 1,000. But we've allowed this animals to die from ships and fishing for too long. Since 2017, we've really entered a new phase of, where things have become so dramatically serious. And we have 31 known mortalities from ships and strikes since 2017 in the US, Canada. But there's also an unusual mortality event that has been registered by NOAA that in case of extreme concerns is registered for whales. And then they put a lot more emphasis at looking at this. And they realize that there's also 11 animals that were seriously injured, which they think are dead. So it's really 42 animals that are lost that we know of, and there's probably a lot more that we don't know of that have died from ships and entanglement. Part of the reason this is happening is that historically the right whales were primarily in U.S. waters and then went up into the Bay of Fundy during the summer to feed. But since 2010, we've seen what most scientists believe is a dramatic turn because of and changing of the environment due to climate change. I'd like to shift to talk to you now about work that's going on in an effort to help the right whale and all the whales with the idea of moving toward ropeless fishing for lobster and crab and other species. We know that around the world, 300,000 whales and dolphins die in fishing gear. And I was struck at this year's recent Marine Mammal Conference over in Barcelona. One of the speakers who addressed us early was from Barcelona, and he had attended the very first World Marine Mammal Conference in 1977. And he went through the abstract book from that year, and he compared it to this year's list of scientific talks and what was being discussed. And what he said was, a lot has changed in the 40 years since we first started as a society, a world society for studying whales. But one thing that hasn't changed is the concern and the impact of fishing on marine mammals.
And that was Zack Klyver of Blue Planet Solutions on the East Coast, although he has a lot of ties on the West Coast. And he had two presentations on this final day. The first one was about the critically endangered North Atlantic right whale. And the second presentation was about the pursuit of ropeless fishing for lobster and crab.
Thank you, Leanne, and thank you, Scott and Tree. We actually have played clips from all of our speakers this week. Sarah Grimes started us off on that last set from the Noyo Center right up in Fort Bragg, talking about her year in review, who and what has washed up on shore, because that's also very, very important. And of course, with Leanne and I are Scott and Tree Mercer, and we just want to thank you guys so much for pulling these speakers together, what we have learned, particularly about both the Atlantic coast and this coast. And the fact that what I've learned from you over the years as you come, and Scott and Tree come to Peggy's place once a month and talk about their sightings, what we have learned about the migration, where these whales and these dolphins and everyone else you report on are going, and how many are dying. And you've talked to us quite a bit about the number who have died and the fact that they are often emaciated. And that was touched on during our presentations here. And with we just have a few minutes left, and I really want to be able to hear your feelings about this symposium that you helped present here. And also, if you would give us a quick update on what you're seeing here off the coast. And Scott, you want to start?
I'd like to backtrack just a little bit. Sarah Grimes had emailed me a couple of points that she didn't have a chance to get to yesterday. She's asked me to add on today that her work is all part of a national database that scientists around the country refer to see what's going on with unusual mortality events, which we've seen here with gray whales, and human interactions, such as entanglements, which Zack was talking about, ship strikes and gunshots. It's interesting, gunshots, because London alluded to gunshots with some of the dead leopard seals up off of New Zealand that she is studying and working with. And Christina Tombach Wright, who showed her infrared camera. She was here with the camera that we affectionately call Fred, infrared. She set up Fred for a week outside of the Point Arena Lighthouse, and we had the opportunity and privilege of working with her on that groundbreaking work. We had quite a week out there with a slight earthquake, winds. We had everything but a blizzard while she was here. Everything that could happen in a marine mammal field study happened while she was here, even a power outage. And Zack while his clip was on, he just texted me and asked me, he was complimenting the format this morning, but also he texted me and asked me what year that Marine Mammal Conference was, the first one. He said 77, and I think it was 74. And interestingly, it was not near the ocean. It was in Indiana at the time. And that was the first gathering of marine mammal scientists. And as I didn't go to that, but as I understand it, it was a whole lot smaller than they are now, where they're filling up 5 ballrooms at a time with speakers and participants. And I remember going to the first few marine mammal conferences where one ballroom was used, and it was just one speaker at a time. You never left your seat the whole time, but now you're running around these big hotels trying to get to the next ballroom. So it's just growing exponentially. And what was the question you asked, Peggy, before I went back in history here?
I think we should remind people you're just listening to the voice of Scott Mercer of Mendonoma Whale and Seal Study right here on our coast and also in Maine. And from years of experience as a sea captain and starting out studying seals, sea lions, and Tree Mercer, who is also here, along with Leigh and Lindsay, and who helped pull off this wonderful event this week of the second annual Ocean Life Symposium. 3 speakers a day, each day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and today we're wrapping it up for you. If you missed it, Leanne, they didn't miss it at all, right? Because they can see it?
That's right. You can go to our YouTube channel where all the videos are. I've been editing some of them, but some of them do still have the intro that you have to wait until we start on radio. So we are doing both simulcast of radio and YouTube TV. So that's where you can find the other days.
I kind of think of it as radio with pictures. And I love that. And I also, I really liked the format as an informal viewer. Like so many people, I appreciated the great presentations from everyone, their PowerPoints, and just being able to learn again so much.
As a matter of fact, I'll just say that some of the people I've been talking to, like Roberta Chan here in our regional parks, she mentioned how great it was to be able to attend this year because she can't always get up to where it was like last year in Mendocino. It's too much of a drive for her, but here it is online and she can participate when it's live or catch up later.
Absolutely. I think this has been a tremendous process. I think what I was asking you both, and Tree in particular, you always give us the whale count every month when you're here. And I'm obviously not going to ask you to tell us the whale count from memory, but what can you summarize what you are seeing over the past several years?
Oh, yes. Well, we are able to see the migration of the gray whales each year. They're leaving their feeding grounds in the Arctic. They feed up in the Bering and Beaufort and Chukchi seas, feed there and really bulk up that thick layer of blubber. And they head down to Baja California, Mexico. There are about 5 lagoons there where in those nice warm waters is where the gray whales breed, and they also give birth. And we get to see them. They pass close enough to our shore that we get to see them during both their northern as well as their southern migration. We've learned that they can be seen here starting maybe early December, but not in high numbers until about mid-January. And we can see them passing by. A lot depends on the conditions of the ocean, but it certainly is a fantastic sight to see. And then coming back to the north after they leave the lagoons, the prime time for that is about mid-March, when very large numbers of them can be seen passing by our coast on their way back to the Arctic for their feeding grounds. Just yesterday, as we left the studio, driving just down to Highway 1, Scott and I spotted this huge blow very close to shore. We quickly got to the Wallala Bluff Trail, and we watched a very large adult whale come in close to feed. We watched it come in by the beach. He was feeding in the kelp, and then he turned and came right up to the edge of the water, right on the beach.
No way.
It was unbelievable. And then he turned around and started to swim off again. And then suddenly we turned. There goes another blow, another adult gray. Now, this is something new that we're discovering, that adult grays are using our area, our coastline year round, and they're here feeding at this time of the year. So we're discovering new things as well.
This is such good news, and
Really.
to hear about these whales and to see them. And what's so much fun is Scott and Tree, who came to us from Maine. So They tell us about whales not only in Baja but Baja Harbor as well,
Which I said with my Texas accent yesterday.
and so. But what we have learned about these amazing mammals, I mean, it's no reason, no secret why Star Trek did a whole movie about the whales so many years and their importance to the world. And we hope to literally hear more about the acoustics. And as we've learned about the orcas and their family life, just amazing.
I just want to thank all the speakers. I know that you may be listening now or you'll be watching later. Thank you so very much for participating with us here at KGUA Public Media in Wallala. We really appreciate your participation and all the information that you have to provide to us.
Absolutely. And I just want to say to the audience as well, if you enjoyed this week of Radio with Pictures, of this kinds of presentations, KGUA would love to do more of these. And
as a matter of fact, we have one coming up that's going to be talking about the new Black Beauty movie. We'll have an interview with the filmmaker and director that is working with Disney to bring it out on Disney Plus.
That's right. Another very similar event, including the Kasari Ranch.
The Kasari Ranch is doing did a horse rescue of which I participated. And we're going to be talking about their event there at the ranch with the filmmaker from Black Beauty. That's coming up in November.
And I am going to do a shameless pitch. This kind of programming requires an amazing amount of work. Thank you, Leigh, for pulling this all together for us,
and all the speakers, everybody.
And that takes a lot of time and effort. And as volunteers, we would really like to be able to do more of this, but it also takes money. And I think that in this time of COVID, when we're at home, we can get this kind of information locally, personally, from people who care about you and care about your community. Please think about making a donation to KGUA. Just go to kgua.org and we will put that money to good use.
And if you want to sponsor any of these events, you let us know that too.
That's right. And you can be a sponsor for KGUA. Yeah. All right, Scott and Tree, again, thank you so much. Leigh, a wonderful, amazing tech woman here. We have to go. We have to leave the ocean, as we do often, and go to the desert now, to Native America Calling, live from Albuquerque, New Mexico. And don't forget to look up the second annual Ocean Life Symposium on KGUA's YouTube channel and catch up on all of this. So we're so happy that we were able to share this with you. And we're going to go now to Native America Calling. This is KGUA in Wallala.